Welcome to Mid-South Money. On this show, we talk to the movers and shakers, the who's who of Memphis and the greater Mid-South, entrepreneurs, innovators, influencers, politicians, athletes and coaches, nonprofit and business leaders. If you want to know how the money flows, please stay tuned.
Welcome to Mid-South Money. I'm your host, Philip Cook. With me is my co-host, Harvey Cook. We thank you for tuning in. We are honored to have Dr. Charles L. Hughes on the show. Dr. Hughes is the director of the Lynn and Henry Turley Memphis Center at Rhodes College. He is also the interim director of the Africana Studies program at Rhodes College. Dr. Hughes received his PhD in U.S. history from the University of Wisconsin-Madison in 2012 and previously served as the Memphis Center's Andrew W. Mellon Postdoctoral Fellow. Dr. Hughes designs courses, programs, and partnerships at Rhodes. His recent course offerings include The History of Memphis, Beale Street, The Past, Present, and Future, Elvis Presley in America, and the Music of the American South. Dr. Hughes has also written several publications. His acclaimed first book, Country Soul, Making Music and Making Race in the American South, was named one of the best music books of 2015 by Rolling Stone. Another publication, No Depression, was named Paste Magazine's Best Nonfiction Book of the Year and one of Slate's Overlooked Books of 2015. Dr. Hughes is currently working on a book about the history of African Americans in professional wrestling in the United States. Dr. Hughes is a voter for the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame and a participant in the Nashville Scene's year-end country music poll. It is a pleasure to have Dr. Hughes on the show. Welcome. Dr. Hughes, can you talk to us a little bit about the evolution of the center? Where did it start and how did we get to where it is today?
Sure.
And what do you see for the future?
Sure. So originally the Memphis Center, before we were lucky enough to get the very generous gift from Lynn and Henry Turley, when it was just called the Memphis Center, was initially an initiative that precedes my time at Rhodes. I actually came, as you said, as the postdoctoral fellow. And the Memphis Center was designed about a decade ago as an idea to, again, collect a lot of the things that were going on at Rhodes that related to regional research and partnership and opportunities for students, faculty, and staff. The previous president of Rhodes College, Dr. Bill Trout, when he came to Rhodes in 1999, said very kind of powerfully and consistently, Rhodes is Memphis. And even though the college in previous generations had not necessarily amplified or spotlighted its connections to our city, Dr. Trout and the members of his administration and a lot of the folks at Rhodes realized that one of the unique and special things about our college and one of the unique and special things about the folks who come to our college is that we're in Memphis and we have an incredible city around us that not only provides opportunities to do really in-depth collaboration, but also represents, as my colleague Tim Hubner in the history department says, Memphis being one of the most under-researched major cities in the United States. So all of these opportunities were kind of at our doorstep, and we had not yet really explored them as fully as we could. So thankfully, President Trout and the administration around him, Rhodes faculty, staff, and students, way back when, before I ever came to Memphis, developed these ideas and the idea of a Memphis Center to bring together all of these different things. And initially it was supported by a grant from the Mellon Foundation, which is how I was able to come to Rhodes as a postdoctoral fellow. And it developed really through a series of different programs and initiatives, ranging from the collection of oral histories through our Crossroads to Freedom project, through the development of things like the Rhodes Institute for Regional Studies and other things as well. So over the past several years, as this program has become a more permanent and a kind of more extensive part of life at Rhodes, the Memphis Center and now the Turley Memphis Center, I think, has become a really essential part of our college's academic program and also in our broader engagement with the community in Memphis. In terms of the future of the Turley Memphis Center, I hope in one way we continue to grow our capacity, as we would say, right? Recently, thankfully, we have been able to add a couple of other staff members, a wonderful associate director, Dr. Stephanie Cage, whose focus is on education and mass incarceration in the United States, a program coordinator, Idis Mercado, who helps bring together a variety of our different initiatives. So we're building up in that way, but also we're expanding our impact on campus and hopefully in the community. I hope that continues, but I also hope that beyond the quantity of things that we do, that we really continue to strengthen the quality of the things we do. You know, one of the temptations when you're involved with so many things in such a great place like Rhodes, such a great place like Memphis, is the temptation to just do as much as possible in all kinds of different areas. But I think that we've learned and we've noticed that as important as it is to do that, we also want to think about how can we make as deep and as substantial and as positive an impact in certain key areas, in certain aspects of the student experience, in certain partnerships and connections with the city. So I think the future for the Turley Memphis Center is, on the one hand, to continue to become a really essential part, not just of our college, but of our city, but also through that to find ways that we can have the deepest and most lasting impact and make the most transformative, positive change that we can in our city.
Right. Dr. Hughes, for those who don't know, can you tell us a little bit about the Turleys,
Sure.
who they are, where they come
Yes.
from, why do they do this?
Yes, well, Lynn and Henry Turley are a really remarkable partnership in a sense, right? And I think both of their careers and both of their interests and both of their long engagement with our city are reflected through the mission of the Memphis Center. So Henry Turley, of course, is a real estate developer who has done really, really powerful and important things in terms of transforming not just the landscape of the city, but particularly back in the in earlier phases of his career, being one of the first people to really insist that we needed to maintain the health and vibrancy of downtown in Memphis and of sort of the urban core at a moment when a lot of resources and a lot of folks were turning their backs and leaving Memphis proper and thinking about how we could expand outside of the geography of the city. And Henry was very insistent early on, saying we can't do that. We have to make sure that our city itself, our core of our community, remains strong. And so through a lot of his projects and a lot of his work, he has been very, very focused on doing things that at the time were somewhat, innovative. He took risks. He had a vision for what the city could look like and would look like. And I think that has been really important now when you look back at what he was saying in the 1970s and 80s about urban planning and urban development. I think you hear a lot of people now in Memphis and elsewhere saying very similar things. So his kind of vision and his interest in transforming our city in positive ways, he is constantly thinking and asking those questions, and I think that that's very much reflected in what the Turley Memphis Center is doing. But also, of course, it is the Lynn and Henry Turley Memphis Center, and Lynn Turley, as a longtime music educator in the city of Memphis, someone whose commitment to education, whose commitment to working with young people, whose commitment to the city is in many ways just as important to our mission and just as deep. I love the fact that we connect the two of them, not only through the name, but also through what we do, that we are using education and the exciting things that can happen with young people in our city to try to do innovative and transformative things. I think both of them reflect that mission, both of them embody that pursuit, and so it's really wonderful to be able to do that work under the Lynn and Henry Turley banner.
Dr. Hughes, if you could tell our audience, how are the Rhodes students involved in the Turley Center? And also, for those folks that are in our audience who are thinking about going to college, what about the Turley Center do you think would attract them?
Sure.
And could you speak to them a little bit?
Absolutely. So there are many ways that the Turley Memphis Center works on our campus. First of all, because we are these various affiliated programs, we have a lot of students doing a variety of different things under the Turley Center umbrella. So student fellowship programs, folks who are working in community service and engagement or working on research projects and getting fellowship funding to do so. We have a group of arts fellows who are specifically thinking about the way that art and community and social change can take place. The Turley Center also has an impact in terms of our curriculum. Beyond the Memphis-specific courses that you mentioned that I have taught, that other folks teach under the umbrella of the Turley Memphis Center, there are faculty members who are not necessarily working in the Turley Memphis Center, but are working elsewhere on campus doing locally and regionally focused courses who we work with. Folks in departments ranging from theater to biology to history, all over campus, have, through the Turley Memphis Center and our affiliated programs, done the work to try to speak to our students' growing interest in a locally focused education. Many students come to Rhodes specifically, at least in part, because of the fact that they get the opportunity to be in Memphis, to work in Memphis, to explore the many opportunities available here. So the Turley Memphis Center becomes a way that they can get connected to those opportunities. I often tell folks when I'm talking to them, particularly new students or prospective students, that one of the things that we like to do in some way is to be a space where folks who are interested in getting involved in the city can come and talk to us, and we can try to send them in the right direction. It may not be that they'll work specifically through the Turley Memphis Center, but I can connect them with a faculty member who might be interested in what they're doing, or with our Career Services and Internships office, who have built an amazing array of opportunities through the city. And that's really helpful in a sense to be at a place like Rhodes that is not huge, right? Where, I don't necessarily know everybody on campus super well, but I'm very aware on us that at a college our size, it's very easy to build those pathways so that a student who comes in, I can say, okay, well, you need to be working with these faculty members. Okay, this is your major. Think about this. Here's might be some internships. Think about that. Oh, we're doing this event. You should definitely be sure to come here because there'll be people there who will be speaking to those issues. So again, Memphis-specific classes and curriculum. We do some work with our first-year seminar and our first-year experience where all of our incoming students at Rhodes get connected to Memphis right away. They all visit the National Civil Rights Museum. They're thinking specifically about Memphis from the very beginning. Through internships and fellowships, whether it's under the Turley Memphis Center or through some of our friends on campus who we work with closely. And then again, through events and programming, just the opportunity to engage with folks, not only who are experts in their field, but also to talk with community members and to be a part of conversations that allow students from the very beginning, no matter what they're thinking of majoring in, no matter what they want to do after they leave, no matter what, right, that we can help them find a pathway or find 3 or 4 pathways. And I found in my time here at Rhodes and working with Memphis-specific stuff that the best ideas that I hear about or that I get to be involved with, many of them come directly from students who are creating and building innovative ways of working on campus and working in the city and kind of forcing us grown-up type people to catch up. I think that's how it should be. I think that's how it often is. And I'm just glad that at a place like Rhodes and through the Turley Memphis Center, we can amplify and emphasize what our students are interested in doing and help them to kind of develop not just a pathway at Rhodes that will speak to their interests, but hopefully a pathway after they graduate and continue to be global citizens, but also hopefully continue to be folks working in Memphis or the Memphis region.
So a lot of these students, when they come to Rhodes, they have a vision of trying to transform Memphis in terms of education, medicine, what have you. And what role does Rhodes play in that to help the Turley Center to help them do that?
Well, again, there's a lot of different ways. Obviously there are specific opportunities on our campus, a lot of them, right? So for example, one of the things that the Turley Memphis Center is very much involved with is trying to connect students to partnerships throughout the city that might be helpful for them to either do an internship with or a fellowship with. But another thing that we try to do also more generally is that by introducing them through the curriculum and through classes they take, to things going on in Memphis, we try to make sure that students who come in are really thinking very critically and intentionally about what it means to do work in a place. So what does it mean to be in Memphis? What does it mean to be thinking about Memphis? What are the challenges in Memphis? What are the opportunities in Memphis? Who are the folks doing the work already in Memphis, right? One of the things that I try to communicate a lot to folks is that great idea. Let's find the people who are already doing that, right? It's not about inventing new things all the time. Oftentimes what it's about is finding the folks and the organizations and the faculty members and the community partners and whoever who are already thinking about these issues, and how do we plug your particular gifts, your interest and energy into that. I think one of the temptations when you're interested in doing this kind of work, as you sort of say, right, is you come in and it's great to have that enthusiasm and energy to want to change things, to want to change the world, to want to change Memphis, to want to change, want to do something totally different, right? Be the new brand. And ultimately, I think the research has shown, and I think my experience, I can certainly say, has shown that that's good, but what's really effective is when you stop trying to kind of change the world and you find specific things that you can participate in and you can help with folks who are already doing things. And what that means is that you not only learn from experts off campus as well, right? Our teaching partners and collaborators around the city. We don't necessarily want our students to think that Rhodes College is where all the expertise is and then we go and share it with everybody else. Obviously there are things that we do that we're very proud of, and we're very, very proud of our students doing that work. But we want right away for them to be thinking about changing Memphis or doing things in Memphis. You can't go into that and hope to have a really good impact if your idea is, well, I'm coming from the college, so I'm coming from where the expertise lives, and I'm going to go help you, right? We really try to get our students away from thinking about, I'm going to go help with this, right? How am I going to work on this with folks, right? How can I be a part of something? And how can I learn from people who are doing this, right? Because, I mean, I don't know, at least for me, when I was 18 years old, I thought I knew everything, right? I thought I had it all figured out. I thought I was totally ahead of the game on all kinds of stuff and all kinds of people, and you couldn't tell me anything. And thankfully, I was surrounded by folks very early on who, through various different ways, persuaded me that that was not the case, right? And that was such an important learning experience for me. So we try to do that as well, that when folks want to go out and help in Memphis, or help to change things in Memphis, we don't want to put out that fire, but we want to make sure that it's being used thoughtfully and with a mindset of collaboration and a mindset towards thinking about how can we do the most positive work and the most sort of just work that we can, because we have to be careful not to replicate the bad things as we're trying to do the good things.
Sure. Dr. Hughes, are there general areas that the Turley Memphis Center likes to focus on? I mean, obviously, there's a lot of change that would do good for this city, and there's a gazillion different places to start. Are there a set number or a certain number of kind of focus areas that y'all like to focus on? And if you could kind of talk a little bit about those.
Absolutely, yeah. So the Turley Memphis Center has 4 kind of core areas that we generally focus on. One of them is the arts and social change, right? So not just thinking about how to stimulate creative activity, how to spotlight the amazing landscape of artistic work that goes on in Memphis, but thinking specifically about how does that arts work relate to thinking about social change? How does it reflect the attempt to create a more just society, or to do something beyond even the value of having artwork in a community? So we think a lot about those things. And actually, when we are launching event for the Turley Memphis Center, after receiving the endowment and launching this new expanded center, was we had the internationally renowned award-winning scholar and teacher and writer Jeff Chang, who has written several books about hip-hop arts and about other art forms and how they connect to thinking about social change in urban settings in the 21st century. And it was really wonderful to have Jeff here, in part because he was able to kind of share with us the things that he'd learned and the things that he recommends. But it was also great because it was kind of cool to have him with our folks kind of being impressed by our students and all those great things too. So the arts and social change is very important. Juvenile justice and youth empowerment, thinking about how do we think about criminal justice, how do we think about mass incarceration, how do we think about the school to prison pipeline, how do we think about various disparities in these areas in ways that not only attempt to address and alleviate those disparities, but also specifically empower folks within a city and community to to feel that they have the power to make change in those areas. Neighborhood and community development is our third core area. And that one is really great, obviously, because on the one hand, we want to think about how does a city continue to stay vibrant and revitalize and become healthy and maintain its health in terms of development. How does that process work? But also, how can we do it in ways that are thinking about people? How can we make sure that we revitalize and develop in ways that don't replicate inequity, that don't displace, that don't do anything of that sort? Because as I think we've seen in a lot of different places around the country and around the world, those kinds of revitalizations and developments, if they're not done thoughtfully and they're not done with the communities in mind, can lead to some bad effects. And I think one of the great things about what we're trying to do is we're trying to cut that off and say, let's think about neighborhood and community development in a way that attempts to do the good things about revitalization while also not losing the good things that are already in those areas. So thinking about that in a kind of dual manner. And the fourth is urban education. We have a wonderful educational studies program at Rhodes. We have an urban education master's degree program at Rhodes. But even beyond those really wonderful programs, how in Memphis, Tennessee, do we think about urban education in a way that addresses the significant challenges and the significant barriers and the significant disparities that are faced here, but also doing so in a way that recognizes the innovative thinking, the great work of educators, the needs of parents in a changing landscape, the needs of students in a changing landscape, the past in Memphis and how education over the course of our history has shaped and changed and all those things, but also thinking about the future. So those are our four key sort of areas that we focus on. But I will say also that one of the things that we wanted to make sure is that although those are areas that we sort of spotlight, we're not just limited to that. If a student comes in wanting to think about something else, we're not going to turn them away because that's not what we do. And obviously those may continue to shift and change as our city shifts and changes, as new things emerge that we feel like we want to focus on, because it speaks to the interests not only of folks at Rhodes, but more importantly, to the needs and the interests of folks in Memphis.
Yeah. Dr. Hughes, obviously some great, wonderful programs. Mm-hmm. Are you aware of other cities and colleges that do something like the Turley Memphis Center? And if so, is there any collaboration that goes on there?
Yeah. So there are institutions that do some similar things. I do think that we're doing some unique things too. And I think that beyond finding partners and collaborators, we are also working to become a national model for this kind of community engaged education and scholarship. But there certainly are other places that I'm aware of. One of the colleges that I'm thinking of right off the top of my head is McAllister up in the Twin Cities in Minnesota, which has developed a really, really robust and powerful community education center and a curriculum and a variety of things on campus. And we've actually talked a lot with the folks up there and hope to do further collaborations, because although in some ways the Twin Cities are very different from Memphis, we do share a lot of things, including our locations on the Mississippi River, if nothing else. But also I think the idea of taking an urban liberal arts college, right, which is a somewhat unique animal, right? We're not the only urban liberal arts college, but we're one of the only ones in the South, and we're one of not that many throughout the country. And that offers us with some really wonderful, exceptional opportunities. So thinking about those kinds of collaborations, we also, of course, collaborate with folks that aren't necessarily exactly like what we're doing, but who offer things that are related and offer important opportunities for collaborations as well throughout the region, but also throughout the country. But I will say, that I think one of the things that we're doing is really trying to establish the Turley Memphis Center and Rhodes College as being a national model for these kinds of long-term conversations and long-term initiatives. And I think I think we're doing a decent job of it, and we're going to do an even better job of it going forward, I think.
Dr. Hughes, could you give an example to our audience of something that one of your students has done through the Turley Center that has either made a difference or served the purpose of education or policy, whatever it may be.
Sure.
That's kind of translated into real life.
Absolutely. So I'll give you two. One of them is a student a few years ago from the Rhodes Institute for Regional Studies, that summer program that I was speaking about earlier. One of the things that the Rhodes Institute is really great for is that at the end of this intensive, powerful 8-week experience in the summer, where all of us together go on what my colleague, the director of the Rhodes Institute, Professor Charles McKinney, calls an intimate intellectual odyssey. And that's really true, right? I mean, every year I learn things and I'm changed, and it's a really transformational experience, right? But one of the things that we do as we go along through that is that students produce significant pieces of work, right? And that can range from award-winning documentaries to published pieces of scholarship. Just last year, a Rhodes Institute alum named Brooks Lamb published a book about the history of Overton Park that was partially created through the Rhodes Institute. But there was another student who, in her time in the Rhodes Institute, worked on an educational policy project. She specifically was thinking about truancy. What creates truancy rates? How do they differ? What are the factors that go into these disparities? Are there disparities in the way that truancy is enforced? How does the enforcement of truancy lead to other educational outcomes? Really thinking broadly, using Memphis as a case study. And before the end of the summer, so before she had even completed the project, she was asked to speak in front of the state of Tennessee's education committee. So she goes to Nashville and speaks in front of legislators about her findings. That's obviously a really direct example of how this work can create an immediate impact. But another that I'm thinking of too is a student who just graduated from Rhodes who has done an incredible amount of work on community arts and specifically thinking about Latinx communities and immigrant and migrant experiences, and using art to express the experiences of those communities, but also to try to create new forms of community building. And now currently she is interning with an art museum in Mississippi, and I know plans to do further work through graduate study, but also just through on-the-ground work in, again, trying to think about, in this moment, when clearly this is something that we all at least should be thinking about, how specifically can artistic expressions be used to document and also to shape the experiences of communities who too often are either left out or forgotten, whose experiences are not considered necessarily in the way they should be. So that's two examples, but there are many others, again, ranging from published work. I often talk about how I cite essays that were written in the Rhodes Institute in my book, and I know I will be doing so again in the future, all the way through to folks who have created wonderful artistic works and policy platforms and other things.
Dr. Hughes, wonderful program you have there. Y'all are doing some great things that are very valuable to Memphis. I wish we could talk about this all day. I really do, but we want to thank you for joining us.
Sure.
And again, congratulations on all the great work that you're doing.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Thanks so much.
Thank you. Thank you for joining us on Mid-South Money. We hope you'll join us again next time.